Well, good morning, Father's House. How are you today? Well, here we are back again. I almost feel like Robin Williams on that show, Good Morning Vietnam, where he's the disc jockey over there. And he gets on every morning when he's getting ready to start. He says, "Good morning, Vietnam." Maybe some of you guys have seen that show. Anyway, I feel like I'm saying, "Good morning, Father's House," just before I start all my comedic interactions with you, the same way that Robin Williams did when he was playing that music. Anyway, he was a much better comedian than I am. So I think I'll leave that to him, and we'll just talk about the things that I think are important for us to talk about as the pastor of the Father's House, and you as members of the congregation of the Father's House, and those watching by way of extension, families, friends, and things as such. Anyway, it's Sunday morning. It's absolutely beautiful out today. I hope you got your cup of coffee or whatever it is that you're drinking today. I decided no bubbly water of any kind, so I've just got this here. It's called a Bubba Cup. It's not a Yeti because I'm too cheap to buy a Yeti. Those are really expensive. So all I'm having today is water out of my refrigerator because it's the cheapest thing that I've got right now. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. So go ahead and get yourself something to drink, and let's talk a little bit. I think that we've got to talk a little bit first of all, before we'll talk about finances. But before we talk about finances, I think it's important that we talk about going back to service, or when we go back to service. I don't know if it will be this next Sunday. It looks like in all likelihood it will be this next Sunday. I think we're going to have to wait to see what our governor has to say about that. But if so, I'm sure there's going to be certain precautions that are going to be put in place, guidelines for us to follow. So that's going to be a time to kind of work through. I guess the first thing we need to talk about is comfort level of our congregation, members of our congregation. That when we come back together, some of you are going to feel more comfortable by staying at home and not coming to be a part of the service. And by all means, I completely understand that. And if you weren't comfortable, I wouldn't want you to come because I wouldn't want to put you in that kind of a precarious position. And so I think that for us, some will feel more comfortable than others. Some of us haven't even had to shelter in place because we've been working all the way through this. Others have sheltered in place and they have a different mind about it. Whatever your mind is, follow that. Follow your own heart, not somebody else's heart, on what it is that you should do. So I want you to use a little bit of wisdom. I also want you to use some grace. If some people don't want to come to church, don't pressure them to come to church. And don't act like it's a lack of faith, because it has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of faith. It has to do with their personal concerns. And so I think in the Father's house, we're all respectful enough of one another to be able to do that. The third thing when we come back together is the idea of social distancing. Some of you are going to have a hard time social distancing. I understand that. I will be one of those. And I'm a hugger, want to give everybody a hug, get close to one another, but that isn't what everybody's comfortable with. And so I think that we really need to be aware of that. Now you can say, well, it doesn't matter, but it does matter to some people. And so I think we're going to have to be a little bit sensitive about where people are as we kind of work through this process. So I'm asking for us all to just kind of be a little more reserved than we might be and look at this from other people's perspective rather than just our own. And in that way, we can give everybody the room that they need to be able to feel comfortable when they do choose to come back. And hopefully that will be, as I said, this next Sunday. If they do open it up for next Sunday, or the first Sunday that they do open up churches, we will have church. Doesn't mean everybody will be there, comfortable being there, but as a pastor of the Father's house, I think it would only be right for us to be open as soon as we possibly can be open. So that's just one of those kind of things. Anyway, just some things to be thinking about in our near future here, which is good news because we've all been sheltered in place. I hope you've missed the Father's house as much as the Father's house has missed you, because it has. Every time I go in the building, it tells me, "Where's my people? Where's my people?" I don't know. They're out having a good time. They're having an extended vacation. So anyway, we'll be there waiting for you when you come back, and we're really looking forward to that. With that said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about finances. As you know, our finances are still an ongoing concern. We've cut back in every way that we possibly can. And we're going to have, again this month, we're going to have a significant deficit. So if there's anything that you can do financially, it would be greatly appreciated. Again, finances are a part of our ongoing ministry as Christians. The idea is that God just doesn't miraculously take care of things. He expects us to take care of things, for us to be involved. And it's the idea we've talked about on many, many occasions when there was the 5,000 people that Jesus fed. And before he fed them, his disciples came to him and said, Lord, what do you want us to do? These people need to go find lodging. They need to go get food because we can't feed them. We don't know where they're going to sleep. And Jesus looked at them with a very profound statement and said, they don't need to go anywhere. You give them something to eat. Well, obviously they weren't able to do that other than look to Jesus. But the idea is that as Christians, we still have responsibilities. And part of our responsibilities, being a part of the body of Christ, whether it would be at the Father's house or another church, is to be givers to the churches that we attend and to the Christian faith. It's something that I guess you could say isn't required, but there is a part where it is spiritually, it shows spiritual maturity when you are a giver. I think you find in life that people that are mature in life, mature people, I mean, that have, I don't know, grown up in their character, are always giving people. They're never selfish. It's never just about them. Well, that's true spiritually too. You can tell and gauge people's spirituality by the level of their giving. And it's not that I go look, because I never look. That's not the issue. The issue is what's in us, what's in our heart. So if you can give, it would be greatly appreciated. There's really several different ways you can give. You can give online at thefathershouse.org. You'll find a button up in the right-hand side. If you push the Give Now button, it'll take you to a screen. You can give a one-time gift, or you can give recurring gifts. The second way that you can give is you can send a check into the Father's House, 133 Bernal Road, San Jose, California, 95119. Or if you're in the immediate area and you want us to come by and pick up a check, we'd be more than willing to do that as well. So whatever works for you, because you don't have stamps or whatever works for you, we would be more than willing to do as far as that goes. But I want to say thank you for all of your giving, because you're a giving congregation, and I love that about you. And we're going to make it through this season, but anything that you could do would be a great help to us. So I want to say thank you in advance for all I know that you're going to do this week and in the coming weeks as well. So that's really all I've got right now, other than to let the men know that we will be having a Zoom meeting again at 6:30 on Monday. If you'd like to be a part of that, you can email me, and my email's at the bottom of the screen. And you can email me, and in that way I'll make sure that I send you the link, the Zoom link, so that you can get on and we can have our men's meeting as we continue through our commentary on the book of Romans. It's been a great study, even on Zoom. It's always better in person, but we've found a way to make Zoom work, and we would want you to be a part of that if you would. And then maybe you can join us on Monday nights after we all start meeting on Monday nights once again. So anyway, men, looking forward to seeing you, and that'll be tomorrow night. With that said, then, I want to continue in our series that we started last week when we talked about Build My Life, the series called Build My Life. What it is principles, Christian principles, that become foundational to us in developing our Christian spirituality. I think one of the things that I've seen and noticed is that just because a person's been a Christian for 40 years doesn't mean they have the maturity of a Christian that's 40 years old either, or 40 years old as well. So you can be, we think about it in the natural world. I mean, how many times have you met an immature 65-year-old man? Probably quite often, haven't you? Or an unwise 65-year-old man. Or a 40-year-old that ought to be doing things a little more grown up, mature than what they're doing, maybe in the way that they handle their finances or the way that they're handling a relationship. It's just this idea of just because somebody has chronological age doesn't mean that they have maturity. And that's not true just of our physical world. It's also true of us spiritually. And so we can say we've been a Christian for 45 years, but that doesn't mean that we have the maturity of 45 years worth of Christian foundational principles that we've built on. So last week we talked about the idea of faith and hope, and the idea that we don't just have faith in God as Christians. We also have faith in those things that He's promised us, and so we have the hope that He's going to fulfill the promise. So what we did was we made faith very concrete, not just some nebulous, abstract idea, right? So I like to use the example of a unicorn. And whenever I use it, there's people that I know that I use it often. They kind of chuckle because this kind of comes down to the idea, or if I ask you the question is, does a unicorn exist? And you would say, no, a unicorn doesn't exist. And I could argue back and say, yeah, a unicorn does exist. It exists in your mind, but it doesn't exist materially, not in the concrete sense that we talk about. And so kind of the idea is we have this abstract idea of what a unicorn is, what she looks like in all of her beauty, whether she would be a pink one or a purple one, and the horn, and how all dazzled up it is, or whatever. I mean, however you want to use your imagination, you can use your imagination to make this beautiful unicorn, can't you? And I think little girls do a better job of that than little boys do. Because little boys, we won't even go there. But it's the idea of this unicorn that doesn't exist, but abstractly in your mind, it does. Well, when we talk about faith, it's kind of abstract in our minds until we make it concrete, something we can tangibly use. The same with hope. Today, I want to talk for just a little bit about the idea of wisdom. Again, we talked about that, and I've been talking about that for quite a while, but wisdom is something that I think is foundational to our Christian experience and our Christian growth. I think it's bedrock. We should be known as people of wisdom. And so I want to talk a little bit about it today. But there's two types of wisdom. There's intellectual wisdom, I guess you could say, or spiritual wisdom. The Greek term for that would be Hagia Sophia, which would be Sophia, meaning wisdom, Hagia meaning holy, so it would be holy wisdom. So we've got kind of this wisdom that we would say, this wisdom from above, this divine wisdom that God's given us. And wisdom in our intellect, where we can tear apart a proverb, say in the book of Proverbs, or tear apart a riddle and understand what a riddle says, because there's a level of wisdom in us that we can discern what's being said between the lines. There's a third type, I guess you call that intellectual wisdom. So you could say there's a holy wisdom and intellectual wisdom. And there's a third one that is, I think, brings it down to a very concrete understanding of how wisdom works for us as Christians and spiritually works for us in the idea of practical wisdom. And by practical wisdom, I mean common sense wisdom. Not wisdom that's out there just in the intellect, not just out there in some kind of spiritual platitudes, but a wisdom that helps us live our life every day. And we find that by that wisdom, our life prospers. So I thought today I wanted to talk about a proverb, not a proverb, a parable. Proverb is a proverb, a parable is a parable. Out of the book of Matthew, and we'll be in Matthew chapter 25, and it's a parable that you've heard often, and yet I want to just make reference to it again and infer some things from it, so that I think we can understand kind of what this sense of practical wisdom is. The idea of, and the word for it is prudent, or prudence. And so whenever you hear the word prudent, it means practical wisdom, or commonsensical wisdom, I guess, if you would have it. And so we're here talking about the 10 virgins, and I'll read it to you, and then we'll talk a little bit. Verse 1 says, "Then the kingdom of heaven will be compatible to 10 virgins, who took their lamp and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the prudent took oil in flasks along with their lamps. Now while the bridegroom was delaying, they all got drowsy and began to sleep. But at midnight there was a shout, 'Behold, the bridegroom, come out and meet him.' And all those virgins rose and trimmed their, and then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the prudent, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the prudent answered, no, there is not enough for us and you too. Go instead to the dealers and buy some for yourselves. And while they were going away to make the purchase, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went into the wedding feast, and the door was shut. Later the other virgins also came and said, Lord, Lord, open up for us. But he answered and said, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Be on alert then, for you do not know the day nor the hour. And he's really talking there about the day or the hour of the Lord's return, but I want to kind of take it out of that and see if we can't understand a little bit about what he's saying about being ready for the Lord's return. But I don't think it just means the Lord's return. I think it means for us to always be ready. And the reason that we're always ready is because we always have wisdom. If we always have wisdom, we're always ready. If we don't have wisdom, then we're never ready. That's kind of interesting, right? If we have wisdom, we're always ready. If we don't have wisdom, we're never ready, would be the idea. So if you were to look in the book of Proverbs, it talks in there about wisdom, and wisdom is personified as a woman. And she's crying out to the naive men and saying, come and get me. Acquire for yourself knowledge. Acquire for yourself understanding. Acquire for yourself wisdom. So wisdom's inviting the young to come. It's not just men, although men probably need wisdom more than women, because I think wisdom probably innately have more than men, but we won't get into that one today. But the idea there is that it's something that we go and get. It's not something we just have. It's something we have to dig for. It's something we have to put our minds to, our intellects to, think through different things. And it says in the book of Proverbs that if you scoff at wisdom, when we need wisdom and you cry out for wisdom, she will be silent. She won't be there. Well, the reason she won't be there is because you don't possess her. So how can she be there? So if we don't possess wisdom, then what happens is when wisdom is required, we don't have what it takes to be able for what we need it to accomplish. So I asked myself today, and I was earlier today and talking with Penny about what are some examples of non-wisdom, of not good, practical, common sense. Well, there's a lot of different things we could talk about with that. Let's talk about credit card debt for a moment. If you live off of your credit card, I don't know, what's your interest rate today on a credit card? Is it 28% a year, 25% a year? Which means that if you don't pay that off within a year, you're going to pay 25% more for what it is that you bought, at least simply because you put it on a credit card. And so what happens now is you've got 25% of your income in that category that's basically going to somebody else because you didn't use common sense, knowing that it's better not to get into that kind of heavy debt. That would be the idea of practical wisdom, of having a credit card and paying it off every single month so you don't have to pay the interest charge. So you look at your credit cards and let's say you've got 10,000 on credit cards. Well, what are you paying a month in interest? $300 a month in interest. Do you realize that that's a car payment? If you needed a car payment, which is still going to debt, but that's kind of different than credit card to some extent. How would that look as far as being able to take that $250 that you're paying the credit card company every single month and to put it in a 401k? Because that too would be wisdom, wouldn't it? Or an IRA. Wouldn't that be wisdom to take some of that money for your future? And so that's the idea of practical, concrete, common sense wisdom. I think one of the best examples of that would be my mom. My mom when I grew up all my life, we never grew up with a lot of money, although we always had what we needed. My mom and my father were hard workers. They had blue collar jobs for the most part. But my mom had this gift of understanding the way that money worked. So what she would do is she had a little bit in stocks and bonds. She had money in savings. And the one thing she said was the most important thing you can do before you retire is own your own home. So she owned her own home, meaning paid for 100%, no loan on it whatsoever. So that was back in when she was 65, which was a long time ago. She's now going to be 97 in July. And she still lives on her own. She lives independently. And every single month, because of the way she's prepared herself financially, she actually puts money in the bank for more savings. So it's not like she's asking for money from anybody else. She doesn't need to. She's got all of her investments, everything she's got, all her retirements, and at the end of the day, she still spends less than she earns, and she still has everything she could ever want and does want. So my mom used common sense to prepare for the end of her life, for when she knew that she could no longer work or chose no longer. And I think sometimes as Christians that we don't do that. We simply say, it's going to take care of itself. God will take care of me. I've got faith. But don't misapply faith. Remember, we talked about faith being tied to the promise of God, not to you living a life independent of being practically wise. See, it's up to us to be wise. It's up to us to take care of ourselves. It's not up to other people to do that. One point, we've got to take responsibility for our own life. So let's go back to the parable of these 10 virgins, shall we, for a moment? I was thinking about how I could explain it so you would understand kind of what's being said about this notion of prudence. And it said that there was these 10 virgins and they had these lamps, these oil lamps. And these little oil lamps or big oil lamps, whatever you would have it is. They would have kind of like what a candle does. It would have oil, although we have wax, which is really kind of an oil-based product, and it has a wick. And you light the wick, and what happens? It comes down and it burns the wax, and the wick stays for a very long time, and it burns through all of the wax. So, but the idea is that in this parable, if we were going to liken it to this here, it would be like the idea of saying that these these bridesmaids, these virgins that were going to come out and meet the bridegroom, were supposed to come with a candle so they could light it and they could walk in together, almost like you would think of a procession of bridesmaids coming into a room carrying candles, if you would have. But what happened was, rather than all of the 10 virgins coming with a candle, what you had is you had some of them coming with a complete candle and some of them only coming with a wick, thinking somebody else was going to give them the candle. They came with a wick, but they didn't come with the oil. Now, it seems like practical sense would tell you that you need both. If you're going to light it, it's going to last long enough for you to get to where you want to go. But it's the idea of saying, well, I'll bring the wick and somebody else will bring the candle. I don't have to worry about the candle because I'll just ask one of the girls and they'll give me one of their candles. And so they get to the event, and sure enough, one girl or 5 of the girls, they have the wick and they have the candle and they're ready. They hear the bridegroom's coming and they light it and it starts to burn. They're ready to go. This thing would probably burn 4 or 5 hours, just this little candle. Well, the ones that didn't bring a candle, they simply lit their wick and it started to burn down. And as it started to burn down, they said, hey, wait a minute. We need some of your wax. If we're going to give us some of your candle. It's almost ludicrous at that point, right? It's like, I can't give you this and have enough for me and for you. You're going to have to go and get your own and come back. Well, let's talk about this for a minute. So in this parable of the virgins, you have these women, these virgins that had all of it. But let's call this something. Let's just call this here just basically, right, our intellect. This is our own intelligence, the way we see things, the way we live our life. This is us, a wick. And the wax is wisdom. And so what happens for us to be ready for anything that would come would be the idea of how much wisdom do we have to make it through our life. In this case, the bridegroom had tarried. It took him longer to get there because he was coming from an outside city. And so there was more substance needed, more forethought needed, more oil needed. And the idea is that going back to, if we have wisdom to make it to the end. But if we don't have wisdom, it's impossible for us to make it to the end. It's impossible for us to pull out that which we need. So for us then, what it takes is for us to go and to purchase wisdom. See, wisdom is never free. It's not something that you just happen upon. It's something that you seek for, something that you search for, something that you apply your understanding to. It's something that you work hard for. And if you don't work hard for it, you don't have it. It's the exact same thing with money. Some cases it's not like for most people that they just have money. You have to go and work for it. And maybe for some, it's how hard you work, you get more money. For others, it's how your education and how you work intellectually to get something that is a product that produces this product for you. It's the same way with wisdom. And so I think that one of the things that we build our life of is prudence. It's wisdom. It's a solid foundation of wisdom. So I have a question to ask you. How is your wick and your oil looking today? How's your wisdom quotient today? Do you have a little wisdom? Do you have a lot of wisdom? And do you want more wisdom? You see, if you have more wisdom, your wick will never burn out. But when you lose it, when it's not there, eventually your wick will burn out. The question is will you say yes to wisdom and buy it and work hard for it and obtain it? It's one of the principles by which we build our life. And I hope that you see that to be true in your life as I do in my life. And so today I want to be a person, I want to be a pastor that pursues wisdom. Wisdom for me and wisdom for others. So that whether God tarries or not, when people are going through some of the darkest times in their life, there'll be enough wisdom there to shine the light that's needed to be shown for them to get them to their ultimate destiny. I'm asking you, will you say yes to Lady Wisdom? If so, let's pray. Father, I just thank you that you've called us to be people of wisdom, that you've called us to be people of substance and depth, not just everything by faith, but understanding in your people, you want there to be this reservoir of wisdom. So Lord, I ask you today, put it in me. Teach me where to find it. My promise to you is I'll seek her out as silver and as gold. And you promised that wisdom will be found. Lord, let it be true for all of us at the Father's house and everybody listening to this message. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, God bless you, Father's house. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the very, very near future in person. Thank you.